What if everything you thought you knew about ancient history was wrong? Picture this. You're an archaeologist brushing dust off a rusted metal tool, only to discover intricate inscriptions that don't match any known language from that time. The craftsmanship is too precise, the symbols too advanced. Your heart races as you realize this object shouldn't exist, at least not in the era it was found. This isn't just a scene from a movie, it's a real mystery that's puzzled experts for decades. Across the globe, artifacts like these have been unearthed, each one a silent challenge to the timelines we've built, each one whispering secrets of a past we're still struggling to understand. Today, we're diving into 27 of these baffling tools, objects that defy logic, rewrite history, and leave even the most seasoned historians scratching their heads. How could a dagger from 3,000 years ago bear markings that resemble modern engineering schematics? Why does a hammer recovered from a layer of rock dating back millions of years show signs of metallurgy that shouldn't have been invented for ages? These aren't just oddities, they're enigmas that force us to question who our ancestors really were and what they were capable of. Some of these tools bear symbols that align with no known civilization, while others showcase techniques so advanced they rival modern machinery. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes someone, somewhere, knew far more than we've ever given them credit for. But here's what's truly thrilling. Every one of these artifacts is a clue, a piece of a puzzle that could reshape our understanding of human ingenuity. Were these tools the work of a lost civilization? Could they be evidence of knowledge passed down from an even older, forgotten world? Or do they hint at something far more extraordinary? As we explore each of these 27 mysterious objects, you'll start to see history not as a fixed timeline, but as a story still being written, one where the past might be far more surprising than we ever imagined. So, are you ready to question everything? Let's begin. To truly grasp why these inscribed tools are so baffling, we need to step back into the world they supposedly came from. Picture the Bronze Age, a time when most tools were simple copper or bronze implements, crafted by hand with techniques passed down through generations. Writing, where it existed at all, was often limited to basic symbols scratched into clay or stone. The idea of intricate inscriptions on metal tools would have been unimaginable for most cultures of that era. Yet here we are, holding objects that defy that very understanding. Take the early Iron Age, for example. This was a period of technological progress, yes, but still one where metalworking was in its infancy. Hammers and chisels from this time were functional, not ornate. So when we uncover a tool covered in precise, unfamiliar symbols, something that looks more like an engineer's blueprint than a blacksmith's rough work, it appends everything we thought we knew. And then there's the writing itself. Some of these inscriptions don't match any known language from their supposed time period. They're not just random scratches, they're deliberate, sometimes even mathematical in their precision. If these tools truly are from the eras they're dated to, who could have made them? Were there secretive guilds of craftsmen with knowledge lost to history? Or could these artifacts be evidence of a forgotten exchange between distant cultures, ones we're only just beginning to uncover? The deeper we dig, the more questions arise. Because if these tools are genuine, they suggest that ancient peoples had access to skills and knowledge far beyond what we've credited them with. But if they're not from their claimed time, then where and when did they really come from? That's the mystery waiting to be solved as we examine each of these 27 enigmatic objects. The Antikythera Mechanism isn't just an artifact, it's a time capsule of genius that shouldn't exist. Discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece over a century ago, This bronze device, no larger than a shoebox, contains a labyrinth of interlocking gears so precise, it rivals the complexity of an 18th century Swiss clock. Yet it wasn't crafted in the Age of Enlightenment. Carbon dating places it squarely in the 1st century before the Common Era, a time when historians believed technology was limited to basic levers and pulleys. What makes this mechanism truly astonishing are the inscriptions etched into its corroded surfaces. They're not just decorative, they form a detailed manual mapping the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with eerie accuracy. The device could predict eclipses, track the cycles of the Olympic Games, and even account for irregularities in the moon's orbit, a feat requiring knowledge of gravitational forces that wouldn't be formally understood for another 1700 years. But here's the real mystery: who built it? Ancient texts mention elaborate astronomical devices, but nothing comes close to the Antikythera Mechanism's sophistication. There's no record of a workshop, no trail of prototypes, no evidence of a lineage of similar inventions. It appears in history as if dropped from the sky, a singular masterpiece with no clear origin. Some researchers speculate it might be the work of Archimedes himself, though he died over a century before the device's estimated creation. Others suggest it was a secret project of the legendary Library of Alexandria, where scholars pushed the boundaries of knowledge before the institution's tragic destruction. The most unsettling possibility that this wasn't an anomaly. What if the Antikythera Mechanism was just one surviving fragment of a much broader technological tradition, one lost to war, time, or deliberate suppression? Every gear, every inscribed symbol whispers the same haunting question: how much of humanity's past brilliance have we already forgotten? As we turn to the next artifact, remember this: the Antikythera Mechanism isn't just a relic. It's a warning. History, it seems, is far more malleable than we've been taught. The Baghdad Battery sits quietly in a museum display, looking deceptively ordinary, just a clay jar about the size of a vase, sealed with asphalt and fitted with a copper cylinder and an iron rod inside. But this unassuming artifact, unearthed near modern-day Iraq and dating back to 250 years before the Common Era, holds a secret that rewrites the story of human innovation. When archaeologists first reassembled its pieces, they noticed something startling. The jar's interior showed traces of acidic residue like vinegar or citrus juice. Combine that with the copper and iron components, and you have all the makings of a primitive electrochemical cell, a battery, centuries before such technology was thought to exist. What's even more intriguing are the faint markings etched into the clay. While some are worn with age, others appear to depict objects being coated in thin layers of metal, a process we now recognize as electroplating. This wasn't just a container, it was a tool with a purpose. The implications are staggering. If this interpretation is correct, it means ancient Mesopotamians weren't just dabbling in electricity. They were harnessing it for practical use, gilding jewelry or embellishing artifacts with techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered until the 1800s. But here's where the mystery deepens. No written records from that time mention anything resembling electrical experiments. No ancient texts describe batteries or electroplating. So who developed this technology, and why was it lost? Some theorists suggest these devices were used in religious rituals, perhaps to create a tingling sensation or a glow during ceremonies. Others propose they were part of a larger, forgotten system of knowledge, one that vanished when libraries burned or empires fell. Then there's the unsettling question of scale. The Baghdad Battery wasn't found alone. Similar jars have surfaced across the region, hinting that this might have been more than a one-off experiment. What if these were the remnants of a widespread practice, a technology that was once common before disappearing into the shadows of history. The more you examine this humble jar, the more it feels like a message in a bottle, one that whispers of a past far more advanced than we've ever dared to imagine. And yet, for all its potential, the Baghdad Battery remains controversial. Skeptics argue it could have been a simple storage vessel, its battery properties just an accidental byproduct of design. But that doesn't explain the inscriptions or the acidic traces. Whether it was a groundbreaking invention or a misunderstood relic, one thing is certain: this artifact forces us to reconsider the boundaries of ancient ingenuity. Because if electricity was truly within their grasp, what else might they have known? The answer could rewrite history, one charged discovery at a time. Buried in the sands near Egypt's Saqqara necropolis lies an artifact that seems to defy the very laws of historical progress, a delicate wooden carving known as the Sakara Bird. At first glance, it appears to be a simple falcon figurine, a common motif in ancient Egyptian art. But tilt it just right, and the resemblance becomes uncanny. The swept-back wings, the aerodynamic curvature of the body, even the distinct vertical stabilizer at the tail features that mirror the design principles of modern aircraft. Dated to around 200 years before the Common Era, this unassuming object shouldn't possess such sophisticated engineering. Yet there it sits, a silent challenge to our assumptions about ancient innovation. What makes the Sakara Bird truly perplexing are the hieroglyphs found alongside it. While many inscriptions from this period describe birds in religious or symbolic terms, these particular carvings use phrases that translate to gliding and soaring through the air, language that feels uncomfortably literal for a culture believed to have no concept of manned flight. Modern aerodynamics experts who have studied replica models made a startling discovery. With minor adjustments to its proportions, the Sakara Bird exhibits remarkable glide capabilities, rivaling paper airplanes crafted with today's understanding of physics. The implications are as tantalizing as they are controversial. Could this have been a scale model for a larger, functional glider? Some researchers point to ancient Egyptian texts mentioning sky boats used by deities, often dismissed as myth. But what if these stories were distorted accounts of real technological experiments? Others suggest the artifact might represent a bird species now extinct, one with flight characteristics we no longer recognize. Then there's the fringe theory that it's evidence of extraterrestrial contact, a notion fueled by the object's resemblance to modern drones. Yet the most plausible explanation might be the most humbling, that an anonymous artisan stumbled upon principles of aerodynamics through observation and intuition, centuries before formal science codified them. After all, the ancient Egyptians were master observers of nature, from the Nile's currents to the flight patterns of birds. Perhaps the Sakara Bird isn't proof of lost technology, but of humanity's timeless capacity for accidental genius, a reminder that brilliance can emerge in the unlikeliest of places. But the mystery lingers. No other artifacts like it have been found, leaving us to wonder whether this was a solitary experiment or a fragment of a broader tradition. As we turn to the next artifact, consider this. Sometimes history's most disruptive revelations come not from grand monuments, but from small, overlooked objects that whisper of possibilities we're only beginning to comprehend. The Kosso artifact is the kind of discovery that makes even veteran geologists doubt their own eyes. Found in 1961 by rockhounds searching for gemstones in California's Coso Mountains, this small, cylindrical object was encased in a solid geode, a mineral formation that typically takes hundreds of thousands of years to develop. When they cracked it open, they didn't find crystals. Instead, nestled inside was what appeared to be a mechanical device, a threaded metal rod surrounded by a ceramic ring, all housed in a hexagonal casing. To anyone familiar with early 20th century technology, it looked unmistakably like a spark plug from the 1920s. But here's the problem: the rock layer it was embedded in dated back 500,000 years. X-ray scans later revealed even more baffling details. Inside the casing were tiny components resembling a copper spring and a magnetic rod, arranged with precision that suggested deliberate engineering. The outer surface bore faint markings, neither serial numbers nor manufacturer's logos, but strange symbols unlike any known script. If this was indeed a spark plug, it wasn't from any factory on record. So how did a seemingly modern tool become trapped in mineral deposits from an era when early humans were just beginning to use stone tools? Skeptics have proposed theories, but none fully explain the anomaly. Some claim it's a mining drill bit from the 1800s, though the materials and design don't match any known equipment from that period. Others suggest it's a fossilized marine creature, despite the clearly artificial components. Then there's the erosion factor. Geodes form through gradual mineral deposition, meaning this object would have had to sit undisturbed for millennia while the rock slowly encased it. The math simply doesn't add up. The most unsettling possibility that the Kosso artifact is exactly what it appears to be, a piece of advanced technology out of time. Could it hint at a forgotten industrial civilization, one that rose and fell long before recorded history? Or does it point to something even more extraordinary, like an ancient understanding of electricity far predating the Baghdad Battery? Whatever the truth, this unassuming object forces us to confront a humbling reality. Our timeline of human progress might be missing entire chapters, and artifacts like this are the cryptic footnotes waiting to be deciphered. What's equally fascinating is how these discoveries echo across cultures. From Egypt to the Americas, similar out-of-place artifacts keep surfacing, each one a piece of the same unsettling puzzle. The Kosso artifact isn't an isolated oddity, it's part of a pattern, one that suggests history isn't the linear march we've been taught. Maybe the past is more like a mosaic, with fragments of lost knowledge waiting to be reassembled. And if that's the case, how many more of these anomalies are still buried, hidden in plain sight? The Viking Ulfbert swords aren't just weapons, they're masterpieces of metallurgy that defy the technological limits of their time. Forged between the 9th and 11th centuries, these blades bear the enigmatic inscription, Ulfberht, inlaid with gleaming steel letters, a signature that transformed ordinary swords into legends. But what makes them truly extraordinary isn't just their craftsmanship, it's the material itself. These swords were made from crucible steel, a metal so pure and free of impurities that historians long believed it was impossible to produce in medieval Europe. In fact, this level of metallurgical sophistication wasn't supposed to emerge until the Industrial Revolution, nearly 800 years later. The secret lies in the steel's composition. Unlike the brittle, slag-riddled iron typical of the Viking Age, Ulfbert blades contained a remarkably high carbon content, almost identical to modern high-grade steel. This gave them unparalleled strength and flexibility, allowing warriors to swing with brutal force without fear of shattering. To put it in perspective, most swords of the era were like crowbars compared to the Ulfbert's razor-sharp precision. But here's the mystery: how did Viking smiths achieve this? Crucible steel requires temperatures exceeding 1,600 degrees Celsius, a feat believed impossible without advanced blast furnaces. Even more puzzling, the nearest known source of such pure steel was thousands of miles away in Central Asia or India. So how did this material end up in the hands of Norse craftsmen? The Ulfberht inscription deepens the enigma. Was it a single master smith's signature or a guild's mark passed down through generations? Some theories suggest these swords were the product of a secretive workshop, possibly funded by wealthy elites who traded with the Islamic world along the Volga River routes. Others propose the steel was acquired as raw ingots, melted down and reforged by Viking hands. Then there's the darker possibility that the Ulfbert name was eventually counterfeited, with later imitations lacking the original's legendary quality. But perhaps the most tantalizing clue comes from a handful of these swords found with strange, rune-like symbols hidden beneath the grip. Could these markings hold the lost recipe for their creation, or were they talismans believed to imbue the blades with supernatural strength? The truth remains buried, much like the swords themselves, scattered across Europe in graves and riverbeds waiting to whisper their secrets. What's undeniable is that the Ulfbert swords represent a technological leap that shouldn't exist in their time. They force us to reconsider the Vikings not just as raiders, but as beneficiaries of a vast, interconnected trade network, one that may have exchanged knowledge as readily as goods. Were these blades the result of a fleeting golden age of craftsmanship, later forgotten amid war and upheaval, or do they hint at a broader tradition of advanced metallurgy, now lost to history? Every Ulfbert sword is a puzzle, and each one challenges us to rewrite the story of medieval innovation. The Piri Reis Map isn't just an old piece of parchment, it's a cartographic anomaly that defies the known history of exploration. Created in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis, this map doesn't just sketch coastlines, it reveals geographical details that shouldn't have been possible for its time. The most shocking, a nearly ice-free outline of Antarctica, a continent that wouldn't be officially discovered for another 300 years. But here's what's truly baffling. The map doesn't just show the continent's rough shape. It depicts mountain ranges and river valleys now buried under miles of ice, features we only confirmed with modern seismic surveys in the 20th century. How could a 16th century navigator know what lay beneath Antarctica's frozen veil? The inscriptions scattered across the map deepen the mystery. Piri Reis himself wrote that he compiled it from older source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. These included descriptions of lands teeming with strange creatures and lush vegetation, details that eerily match fossil records of Antarctica's temperate past, millions of years before human civilization. Even more puzzling are the precise longitudinal measurements, a feat European cartographers wouldn't master for another 2 centuries. The map's accuracy isn't just impressive, it's inexplicable by the standards of its era. One theory suggests the Ottomans had access to lost knowledge from the Library of Alexandria, where ancient Greek and Egyptian scholars may have preserved advanced geography. Others propose the map traces back to seafaring cultures like the Phoenicians, whose voyages might have spanned far beyond the Mediterranean. Then there's the controversial idea that a pre-Ice Age civilization, one now completely erased from history, mapped these lands before they froze over. But skeptics raise valid counterpoints. Could the landmass labeled as Antarctica actually be a distorted version of South America? Some historians argue the map's southern continent is simply an artistic interpretation of rumored lands pieced together from sailors' tales. Yet this doesn't explain the uncanny alignment with subglacial topography. The most compelling clue lies in Piri Reis's own notes. He mentions consulting maps from the 4 corners of the Earth, hinting at a global network of knowledge far more extensive than we've credited to ancient mariners. What if the Piri Reis map is more than a navigational tool? What if it's a fragment of a forgotten epoch, a time when humanity's understanding of the world was far broader than we imagine? Every line, every inscription forces us to reconsider not just who discovered Antarctica, but how much of our planet's history remains hidden beneath the ice and the sands of time. The next artifact only deepens the enigma, suggesting that these weren't isolated accidents but part of a pattern we're only beginning to recognize. High in the mountains of China's Bayan-Ha range, a discovery was made in 1938 that still sends chills down the spines of archaeologists. A team led by Professor Kai Pute stumbled upon a series of caves, their walls lined with neat rows of tombs, but it was what lay inside those graves that defied explanation. Hundreds of stone discs, each roughly 12 inches in diameter with perfect holes at their centers, lay stacked like forgotten records. At first glance, they resembled ordinary ceremonial objects, if not for one eerie detail. Every disc was etched with a continuous spiral of tiny hieroglyphs, symbols so precise they could only have been made with tools far advanced for their time. Carbon dating placed them at 12,000 years old, a period when humans were supposed to be primitive hunter-gatherers, not creators of intricate written language. Then came the translations, or rather, the claims that would ignite decades of controversy. In 1962, a Russian linguist named Dr. Tsum Amnui announced he'd deciphered portions of the script. According to his notes, the glyphs told a harrowing story of a spacecraft crashing into the mountains, its occupants described as slender beings with large heads stranded on Earth. The locals, the Dropa tribe, allegedly sheltered these strangers until they perished, their tale preserved in stone. If true, this would be the oldest recorded account of extraterrestrial contact in human history. But here's where the mystery twists. No other examples of this script exist. The Dropa Stones stand alone, their symbols unlike any known writing system from that era or region. Even more troubling, the original caves were sealed by Chinese authorities in the 1960s, and most of the discs vanished into storage, leaving only photographs and a handful of smuggled fragments for study. Skeptics argue the translations are hoaxes, pointing out that Dr. Tsum Amnui's research was never peer-reviewed. Others suggest the discs might be by discs, ancient Chinese ceremonial objects, except those date back only 5,000 years, and none bear inscriptions. Then there's the physics. When researchers examined one of the few surviving discs under microscopes, they found something startling. The stone contained high concentrations of cobalt and other metals, with crystalline structures suggesting they'd been exposed to intense electromagnetic fields. Could these have been some kind of primitive data storage, or even components of a long-lost technology? The local Dropa people's oral traditions add another layer of intrigue. Their legends speak of star ancestors who descended from the sky in glowing vessels, a story eerily similar to the translated inscriptions. Whether the Dropa stones are proof of ancient astronauts, a misunderstood cultural artifact, or an elaborate historical prank, one thing is certain: they represent a gap in our understanding of early human civilization. If the glyphs are genuine, they hint at a forgotten chapter where advanced knowledge or otherworldly contact existed millennia before the pyramids. And if they're not, that raises an equally unsettling question. Why would someone 12,000 years ago go to such lengths to carve hundreds of discs with a language that never existed? The answer, much like the stones themselves, remains just out of reach. What lingers isn't just the possibility of ancient alien contact, but the broader implication that human history might be filled with these cryptic breadcrumbs, waiting for us to piece together a story far stranger than we've ever imagined. And as we'll see with the next artifact, the Dropa stones aren't the only objects suggesting we've underestimated our ancestors or whoever came before them. The London Hammer isn't just an out-of-place artifact, it's a geological impossibility that rewrites the rules of human history. Discovered in 1936 by a couple hiking near London, Texas, This small, rusted hammer was found protruding from a solid chunk of rock dating back over 100 million years, a time when dinosaurs still roamed the Earth. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary 19th century tool, the kind any blacksmith might forge. But here's what defies logic. The hammer's head is made of an unusually pure iron alloy, with no traces of slag or imperfections, a quality unseen until the Industrial Revolution. Even more baffling, the wooden handle had begun the slow process of fossilization, a transformation that takes millions of years. Then there are the markings. Etched into the handle's surface are faint symbols, a series of angular lines and curves that resemble no known alphabet or numerical system. Some researchers suggest they could be tally marks or ownership glyphs, but their precise meaning remains stubbornly elusive. If this hammer was crafted by human hands, how did it end up encased in Cretaceous-era stone? The rock surrounding it was tested multiple times, each analysis confirming its ancient origin. There's no evidence of a fissure or cavity where the hammer could have been inserted later. It's as if the tool was sealed inside the stone as it formed. Mainstream science has struggled to explain this anomaly. Some geologists propose that the hammer's encasement isn't sedimentary rock but a rare type of concretion, a mineral deposit that can form more quickly around objects. Yet even this theory doesn't fully account for the hammer's advanced metallurgy or the handle's fossilized state. Others argue the artifact might have been dropped by a time traveler, a speculative idea, but one that underscores how thoroughly this object disrupts conventional timelines. Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't who made the hammer, but when. Could it be evidence of a prehistoric civilization, one that developed advanced metalworking only to be wiped out by catastrophe? Ancient texts like the Mahabharata describe weapons of unimaginable power, while Sumerian tablets speak of gods who bestowed knowledge upon humanity. Are these stories distorted memories of a lost technological age, or does the London hammer point to something even stranger? An Earth where time doesn't flow linearly, where objects from different eras occasionally slip through cracks we don't yet understand. What's certain is that this unassuming tool forces us to confront the gaps in our understanding. It's not just a relic, it's a riddle carved in iron and stone, daring us to reconsider everything we think we know about humanity's place in deep time. And as we'll see, it's far from the only artifact suggesting that our history might be older and far more mysterious than we've ever imagined. Deep within the Temple of Hathor at Denderah, a carving on the ancient stone walls stops visitors in their tracks. It shows a surreal scene, a giant, elongated bulb-like object, its interior coiled with what appears to be a serpentine filament, resting on a stand reminiscent of an insulator. Surrounding it are figures holding cables or ropes, their poses suggesting some kind of ritual involving this strange device. The hieroglyphs accompanying the relief call it the secret light of the gods, a tool wielded by priests to illuminate sacred spaces without flame or smoke. To modern eyes, it looks unmistakably like an electric light bulb, a technology supposedly invented thousands of years later. What makes the Denderah Light so unsettling is the precision of its details. The bulb isn't a vague shape. It's rendered with technical accuracy, from the tapered glass enclosure to the wavy filament inside, eerily resembling the tungsten coils in early 20th century incandescent bulbs. Even the supporting structure mirrors the design of electrical insulators used in high-voltage equipment. Skeptics argue it's a symbolic depiction of a lotus flower spawning a snake, a common motif in Egyptian mythology. But that explanation falters when you examine the temple's other carvings. No, where else are lotus and serpent combined in this distinctly mechanical way? Then there's the context. The Denderah complex houses underground chambers where torches would have been impractical due to limited oxygen, yet no soot stains mar the ceilings. Could these spaces have been lit by something else? Ancient texts describe portable, fireless light devices used in rituals, and the Greek historian Plutarch wrote of Egyptian priests carrying stars in baskets, glowing objects that defied explanation. Even more compelling are traces of zinc and copper vessels found in the temple materials that, when combined with an acidic electrolyte, could theoretically form primitive batteries, much like the Baghdad Battery. The most intriguing clue lies in the hieroglyphs themselves. Among the usual religious invocations, one passage describes the light as requiring a liquid of the gods to function, a phrase some researchers interpret as an electrolyte solution. Another warns the uninitiated against touching the device, hinting at a power source capable of delivering a shock. Could this be a garbled account of electrical knowledge, preserved through ritual long after its practical use was forgotten? But if the Egyptians truly harnessed electricity, why is there no widespread evidence? Perhaps the answer lies in the secretive nature of their priesthood. Technologies reserved for temples might never have reached the broader population, leaving only cryptic carvings as clues. Or maybe the Denderah Light represents a fleeting discovery, a scientific dead end lost to time. Whatever the truth, this ancient relief forces us to confront a tantalizing possibility: that humanity's relationship with technology might be far older and far more mysterious than we've ever dared to believe. As we turn to the next artifact, remember this: sometimes history's most revolutionary ideas aren't found in libraries or laboratories, but in the silent stones of forgotten temples, waiting for us to decipher their shocking secrets. The Nasca spiral artifacts gleam under museum lights, their golden surfaces etched with patterns so precise they seem to pulse with hidden meaning. Discovered in burial sites across Peru's arid Nasca desert, these coiled metal objects resemble nothing else from their time around 2,000 years ago. Each one is a masterpiece of symmetry, with grooves and inscriptions spiraling outward like miniature galaxies frozen in gold. But here's what stops historians cold: the Nasca people left no written records. They're famous for their vast desert geoglyphs, the enormous drawings only visible from the air, yet these handheld artifacts suggest a sophistication that goes far beyond simple symbolism. What makes these spirals truly extraordinary are the markings themselves. Under magnification, the grooves align with uncanny precision to constellations visible in the southern hemisphere, particularly the Pleiades star cluster, a celestial formation the Nasca revered. Some spirals even mirror the logarithmic patterns found in hurricanes and galaxies, mathematical sequences not formally described until the 17th century. How could a culture without written language encode such complex astronomical and mathematical knowledge into metalwork? The precision implies specialized tools, possibly lathes or engraving devices, yet no such equipment has ever been found at Nasca sites. Then there's the gold. Analysis reveals it was alloyed with trace amounts of platinum, a metal with a melting point exceeding 1,700 degrees Celsius, a temperature the Nasca shouldn't have been able to achieve. Even more perplexing, the alloy's composition matches ore samples from the Andes Mountains over 300 miles away. Did the Nasca possess metallurgical knowledge allowing them to transport and refine materials across such distances? Or does this hint at a broader network of exchange, one that connected distant cultures with shared technological secrets? Local legends offer a tantalizing clue. Oral traditions speak of sky threads, golden cords said to connect the earth to the heavens, wielded by gods who descended to teach humanity. Could these spiral artifacts be physical representations of that belief? Some researchers suggest they were used as astronomical calculators, their twists and turns serving as a navigational aid for planting seasons or religious ceremonies. Others propose they functioned as resonant devices when spun or struck. Certain spirals produce harmonic frequencies that match vibrational patterns found in nature, from bee wings to planetary orbits. But the biggest enigma remains the symbols themselves. Unlike the Nasca lines, which depict animals and geometric shapes, these inscriptions resemble a proto-writing system, a series of dots, lines, and curves arranged in repeating sequences. Linguists note similarities to later Quechuan number symbols, raising the possibility that the Nasca developed a coded numerical language centuries before the Inca. Yet without a Rosetta Stone to decode them, their true meaning may forever elude us. What's undeniable is that these artifacts shatter our assumptions about pre-Columbian technology. They're not just ornaments, they're puzzles crafted in gold, each spiral a silent question about the depth of ancient knowledge. Were the Nasca more advanced than we've credited? Or do these objects point to a forgotten teacher, a culture, or even something beyond that left behind clues in metal and light? As we turn to the next artifact, remember, sometimes history's most profound mysteries are small enough to hold in your hand, whispering across millennia in a language we're still learning to hear. The Maine Penny isn't just a coin. It's a tiny, weathered piece of metal that appends the entire story of transatlantic exploration. Found in 1957 at a Native American archaeological site in Maine, this silver artifact bears the unmistakable markings of 11th century Norse craftsmanship. On one side, a crude cross, on the other, a face with wide, staring eyes, a design consistent with coins minted under King Olaf Kir of Norway around 1080. But here's what defies logic. This coin was unearthed among the remains of a Penobscot settlement dating back to the 1200s, a full 3 centuries before Columbus set sail. How did a Viking relic end up buried in the soil of North America, thousands of miles from the nearest Norse settlement? The inscriptions tell part of the tale. Microscopic analysis reveals where patterns suggesting the coin circulated for decades before being lost, its edges smoothed by countless hands, but whose hands? Norse sagas like the Saga of Eric the Red speak of fleeting voyages to a land they called Vinland, now believed to be Newfoundland's Elance Ox Meadows. Yet that site lies over 1,000 miles northeast of the main discovery. Did Viking explorers venture farther south than we've ever imagined, trading with indigenous peoples along the way? Or did the coin travel through intricate trade networks, passed from tribe to tribe until it reached the Wabanaki Confederacy's doorstep? Then there's the context. The Maine Penny wasn't found alone. It lay beside stone tools and pottery shards typical of the region's pre-contact cultures. No other Norse artifacts were present, ruling out a Viking campsite. This suggests the coin was valued not as currency, but as a curiosity or talisman. Perhaps it was gifted during a chance encounter or traded for furs or food. Some researchers even propose it arrived via indigenous maritime traders who ventured as far as Greenland, where Norse settlers coexisted with the Thule people. But skeptics raise valid doubts. Could the coin have been planted or accidentally introduced by modern collectors? Radiocarbon dating of nearby organic materials confirms the site's age, yet the penny remains an isolated find. Even more puzzling, Norse records mention trading with the Skraelings, their term for indigenous Americans, but never describe reaching the dense woodlands of present-day Maine. The coastline, however, tells another story. Currents and winds from Greenland naturally drift southwestward, making accidental voyages plausible. Did a storm-blown Norse Nar or cargo ship wash ashore here, leaving behind this single cryptic clue? What's undeniable is the Maine Penny's power to disrupt. It's not just proof of pre-Columbian contact, it's a testament to the unpredictable threads connecting civilizations. For a moment, picture a Norse trader pressing this coin into the palm of a Wabanaki hunter, two worlds colliding briefly, then parting, leaving only this silver whisper across the centuries. The next artifact only deepens the mystery, suggesting these encounters might not have been as rare as we've been led to believe. Buried beneath the ancient soil of Mexico's Toluca Valley lies a face that shouldn't exist, a terracotta head with the unmistakable features of a Roman aristocrat. Discovered in 1933 within a tomb at Takaxic, Kalax, this artifact dates back to around 200 years before the Common Era, a time when the mighty Roman Republic was still centuries away from its imperial peak. At first glance, the head appears unremarkable, a weathered sculpture with a neatly trimmed beard and classical Roman hairstyle. But here's what defies explanation. The tomb where it was found belonged to the pre-Columbian Matlatzinca culture, a civilization with no known ties to Europe. Even more baffling are the faint inscriptions etched into the terracotta, characters resembling Latin script, a writing system that shouldn't have reached the Americas for another 1,500 years. The craftsmanship tells a story of its own. Unlike the stylized figures typical of Mesoamerican art, this head exhibits the naturalistic proportions and fine detailing characteristic of Roman portraiture. The folds of the toga, the curl of the hair, even the subtle asymmetry of the facial features all point to a sculptor trained in Mediterranean traditions. Archaeologists initially dismissed it as a colonial-era hoax, but thermoluminescence dating confirmed its ancient origin. The clay was fired over 2,000 years ago, long before Spanish galleons crossed the Atlantic. So how did a Roman artifact wind up in a Mexican burial mound? One theory suggests transoceanic contact far earlier than historians have dared to propose. Could a Roman vessel have been blown off course, drifting across the Atlantic to the shores of Mesoamerica? Ancient Roman texts like Pliny the Elder's Natural History speak of distant lands beyond the Pillars of Hercules, while pottery shards with Roman markings have surfaced in Brazil and the Azores. Then there's the curious case of the Bat Creek Stone, a Tennessee artifact bearing Paleo-Hebrew script, another example of Old World writing in pre-Columbian America. Were these isolated accidents or clues to a forgotten network of seafaring trade? Skeptics argue the Takaxic Kalax head might represent a local interpretation of a bearded deity, perhaps influenced by rare contact with Norse explorers or even Polynesian voyagers. But this doesn't explain the Latin-like inscriptions or the technical precision of the sculpting. Others propose a darker possibility, that the artifact was planted to fuel pseudo-historical narratives. Yet the scientific dating is hard to ignore, and the head's discovery predates modern theories about pre-Columbian transatlantic contact by decades. The most tantalizing clue lies in the tomb itself. Buried alongside the head were offerings typical of Matlatzinca rituals, obsidian blades, jade beads, and ceramic vessels. If this was a hoax, why go to such lengths to embed it authentically? Local oral traditions add another layer of intrigue. Legends speak of pale strangers who arrived by sea long before the Spanish, bringing strange customs and unfamiliar gods. Could these stories preserve fragmented memories of real encounters? What's certain is that this unassuming terracotta head forces us to confront the gaps in our historical maps. It's not just an out-of-place artifact, it's a silent challenge to the boundaries we've drawn between ancient civilizations. Whether it's proof of Roman sailors reaching the New World or evidence of a lost artistic tradition that spanned continents, one thing is clear: The Takaxic Kalax had whispers of connections we're only beginning to imagine. And as we'll see, it's far from the only artifact suggesting that the ancient world was far more interconnected than we've ever dared to believe. Buried beneath the banks of Romania's Mureș River lies an object that shouldn't exist. The Ayod artifact, a wedge-shaped chunk of metal that defies everything we know about human technological progress. Discovered in 1974 beneath layers of sediment dating back 250,000 years, this weathered relic looks unremarkable at first glance until you realize it's made of aluminum, a metal that wasn't smelted by humans until the 19th century. Even more perplexing are the grooves carved into its surface, a series of deliberate markings that resemble no known writing system from any era. The chemistry tells a story science can't easily explain. Lab analysis revealed the wedge is composed of 89% aluminum, with trace amounts of copper, zinc, and other metals, an alloy suspiciously similar to modern aerospace-grade materials. Aluminum occurs naturally only in compounds, requiring immense electricity or advanced chemical processes to isolate. The Hall-Héroult method, developed in 1886, was humanity's first breakthrough in producing it industrially. So how did this object end up encased in Pleistocene-era strata, a time when early humans were barely mastering fire, let alone metallurgy? Then there's the context. The Ayod artifact wasn't found in isolation. It lay alongside mastodon bones, extinct relatives of elephants that vanished over 10,000 years ago. The sediment layer's age was confirmed through multiple dating methods, ruling out modern contamination. The wedge's pitted surface shows signs of prolonged exposure to oxygen and water, consistent with millennia of burial. But here's the twist. Aluminum forms a protective oxide layer that resists corrosion, meaning this object could be far older than its burial site suggests. The inscriptions deepen the enigma. Unlike decorative etchings on later artifacts, these grooves are precise and angular, arranged in patterns that hint at mathematical or symbolic meaning. Some researchers see parallels to Sumerian cuneiform, though that writing system emerged a mere 5,000 years ago. Others note similarities to schematic diagrams found in 20th century engineering manuals. If this was a tool, what was its purpose? The wedge's shape suggests a structural component, perhaps part of a larger machine, but one that predates even the wheel by hundreds of millennia. Mainstream archaeology struggles to reconcile this anomaly. Some propose the artifact is a fragment of a World War II aircraft, though the alloy composition differs from period aviation metals. Others suggest it fell from a Soviet satellite, despite no records of such debris in the area. Then there's the fringe theory that it's a remnant of Atlantis or extraterrestrial technology, though these ideas lack empirical support. The most unsettling possibility, that it's genuine evidence of a lost industrial civilization that rose and collapsed long before recorded history, leaving only this metallic whisper behind. Local legends add another layer of mystery. Folklore from the Carpathian Basin speaks of sky iron, gifted by gods who descended in fiery chariots, while nearby Transylvanian caves contain Bronze Age drawings of figures holding strange, glowing implements. Could these stories be distorted memories of advanced ancient technology? Or does the Ayod artifact represent something even stranger, a glitch in our understanding of time itself, where objects occasionally slip between epochs like pages stuck together in a book? What's undeniable is that this unassuming wedge forces us to confront the limits of our historical narrative. It's not just an out-of-place object. It's a question cast in metal, demanding we reconsider humanity's timeline. Whether it's proof of forgotten innovation, interstellar contact, or a chronological anomaly, one thing is clear: The Ayad artifact refuses to fit neatly into any textbook. And as we'll see, it's far from the only relic suggesting that the past might be far more complex and far more astonishing than we've ever imagined. The Kensington Runestone sits in a small Minnesota museum, its surface weathered by centuries of wind and rain, but the runes carved into its face remain startlingly clear. Discovered in 1898 by a Swedish immigrant farmer, this 200-pound slab of greywacke tells a story that shouldn't exist. The inscription, written in medieval Norse runes, describes a group of Viking explorers stranded in North America in the year 1362, over 100 years after the last known Norse voyages to Vinland. Here's where history falters. No other archaeological evidence supports a 14th-century Norse presence this far inland. So is this stone a genuine record of forgotten explorers or an elaborate fabrication? What makes the Kensington Runestone so divisive are the runes themselves. Linguists note they're an unusual mix of Old Norse and medieval Swedish, with grammatical quirks that match 14th-century Scandinavian dialects, knowledge unlikely to be possessed by a 19th-century farmer. The text recounts a tragic tale. 8 Goths and 22 Norwegians on a journey of exploration from Vinland westward. We had camped by 2 rocky islands 1 day's journey north from this stone. We were out fishing one day. When we returned, we found 10 men red with blood and dead. A VM save us from evil. The visceral detail feels too specific for a hoax, yet no bodies, weapons, or settlements matching this description have ever been found. Then there's the geology. Mineral deposits in the rune grooves suggest centuries of weathering, consistent with the stone being exposed since the Middle Ages. Skeptics argue it could have been artificially aged, but modern tests can't definitively prove or disprove its authenticity. Even more intriguing are the rocking stones mentioned in the inscription, 2 glacial boulders near the discovery site that local indigenous oral traditions describe as ancient meeting points. Could these have served as landmarks for lost Norse travelers? The broader context deepens the puzzle. While Elance Orks Meadows proves Vikings reached Newfoundland around the year 1000, the idea they ventured as far as Minnesota seems improbable. Yet the stone's route description aligns with known Norse navigation methods, following rivers and portages from Hudson Bay to the Red River Valley. Medieval Norse sagas mention expeditions disappearing into the western wilderness, never to return. Could the Kensington Party have been one such ill-fated group? Hoax theories can't be dismissed. The late 1800s saw a surge of Scandinavian immigrants nostalgic for their heritage, and rune carving was a popular pastime. But if the stone is a fake, why include such obscure linguistic details? And why place it near a remote Minnesota farm instead of a more publicity-friendly location? The farmer who found it, Olof Oman, had no known expertise in runes or history, just a simple man who claimed to unearth it tangled in tree roots. Perhaps the most compelling clue lies in the rune stone's lone surviving counterpart. In 1923, a similar inscribed stone was found near the Chippewa River, describing a Norse expedition to the land of the tall corn. Though now lost, early sketches show runes nearly identical to Kensington's. Were these markers left by a doomed band of explorers, or fragments of a broader narrative we've yet to uncover? What lingers isn't just the question of authenticity, but the stone's power to unsettle. If genuine, it rewrites the timeline of European contact with the Americas. If fake, it's a hoax of unparalleled sophistication, one that's fooled experts for over a century. Either way, the Kensington Runestone forces us to confront how little we truly know about the shadows skirting the edges of recorded history, and how easily a single artifact can make the past feel stranger than any fiction. The Quimbaya artifacts gleam in museum cases like treasures from a forgotten age, golden figurines crafted by an ancient Colombian culture over 1,000 years ago. At first glance, they resemble stylized birds or insects, their wings swept back in graceful curves, but tilt them just right and the resemblance becomes uncanny. Delta wings, vertical stabilizers, even what appear to be cockpit canopies. These aren't just decorative pieces, they look like miniature aircraft, complete with aerodynamic features that wouldn't be understood until the 20th century. What makes these artifacts truly baffling are the inscriptions found alongside them. Carved into temple walls near the discovery site are descriptions of sky chariots and flying boats, with detailed accounts of their operation. One passage speaks of wind trapped in metal tubes, allowing ascent, while another mentions invisible threads tethering the devices to the earth, phrases that eerily echo modern principles of aerodynamics and propulsion. The Quimbaya people left no written records beyond these carvings, and their civilization vanished centuries before the Spanish arrival, leaving these golden enigmas as their only testimony. Scientists have put the figurines to the test. In 2014, aerospace engineers constructed scaled-up replicas based on the artifact's proportions. When subjected to wind tunnel tests, the models exhibited remarkable stability, with lift-to-drag ratios comparable to early aircraft designs. Some even performed flawlessly as radio-controlled gliders. This isn't just artistic coincidence. The shapes follow functional aerodynamic principles. So how could a pre-Columbian culture, with no known exposure to flight, craft objects that mirror modern engineering? One theory suggests the Quimbaya observed natural flying forms, seeds, birds, or insects, and unconsciously replicated their efficient shapes. Yet the figurines lack biological features like feathers or legs, focusing purely on structural elements like wings and fuselages. Others propose they represent shamanic visions, depicting spiritual journeys rather than physical machines. But this doesn't explain the technical inscriptions or the fact that similar aircraft motifs appear in artifacts from distant cultures like Egypt's Sakara Bird. The most controversial explanation, that these golden models were based on real technology, either from a lost human civilization or, as some fringe theorists suggest, inspired by extraterrestrial visitors. Local oral traditions speak of gods from the stars who arrived in shining vessels, tales often dismissed as myth. Yet the precision of these artifacts gives pause. Were the Quimbaya recording something they'd witnessed, preserving advanced knowledge in gold for future generations? Perhaps the truth lies between these extremes. The figurines might encode observations of natural phenomena, wind patterns, bird flight, or even celestial movements, expressed through an artistic lens we no longer fully understand. Whatever their origin, the Quimbaya artifacts serve as a haunting reminder. Sometimes the past speaks in shapes and symbols we recognize but cannot explain, leaving us to wonder how much knowledge has been lost to time. And as we'll see, they're not the only ancient objects that seem to defy their era's technological limits. The Aika Stones sit in a quiet museum in Peru, their surfaces covered in carvings that make archaeologists and historians pause because what they depict shouldn't be possible. These andesite rocks, some as large as watermelons and others small enough to fit in your palm, are etched with scenes that defy conventional history. Humans interacting with dinosaurs, performing complex surgeries, and using what appear to be advanced astronomical instruments. The most unsettling part, many of these stones were found in burial caves dating back to pre-Columbian times, their surfaces weathered in ways that suggest centuries of age. Yet the images they bear are anachronistic beyond belief. Dinosaurs drawn with scientific accuracy, spinal surgeries that mirror modern techniques, and even what looks like telescopic observation of celestial bodies. What makes the Aika Stones so contentious are the inscriptions that accompany these images. Tiny, intricate symbols run along the edges of the carvings, a script unlike any known Andean writing system. Some resemble Proto-Sumerian cuneiform, while others mirror markings found on the Nasca spiral artifacts. Linguists who have analyzed them describe the script as structured but undecipherable, with repeating patterns that suggest a numerical or linguistic system. If these stones are genuine, they imply the existence of a lost civilization that somehow knew about dinosaurs, mastered medical knowledge we wouldn't rediscover until the 20th century, and documented it all in a language we can't read. Then there's the craftsmanship. Unlike the stylized artwork typical of ancient Peruvian cultures, these carvings are startlingly precise. One stone shows a human figure mid-surgery, the anatomical details of the exposed spine rendered with accuracy that would require formal medical training. Another depicts a stegosaurus with the correct number of tail spikes and dorsal plates, features paleontologists only confirmed in the 1970s. How could artists from 1,000 years ago have known these details? Skeptics argue the stones are modern hoaxes, but weathering tests conducted in the 1990s revealed mineral deposits deep within the engraving grooves, suggesting the carvings are at least several centuries old. The story takes a stranger turn when you examine their discovery. Local farmer Basilio Ashuya first brought the stones to light in the 1960s, claiming he'd found them in caves near the Aika River. Under pressure from authorities, he later confessed to carving them himself, but then recanted, saying he'd lied to avoid prosecution for looting archaeological sites. Even more puzzling, similar stones had been documented by Spanish missionaries in the 1600s, their writings describing devilish images the Inca claimed were relics from a time before time. So if the Aika stones are fake, who could have made them? The technical skill required to replicate dinosaur anatomy or surgical procedures would demand expertise far beyond a rural farmer's knowledge. And why go to such lengths to create hundreds, if not thousands, of these objects? Some theorists suggest they might be remnants of an elaborate 20th century hoax aimed at discrediting mainstream archaeology. Others propose they were crafted by an underground network of indigenous artisans preserving forbidden knowledge during Spanish colonization. But the most haunting possibility is that they're authentic, fragments of a forgotten narrative where humans and dinosaurs coexisted, where advanced medical and astronomical knowledge was commonplace. Local oral traditions speak of the Namelap, a godlike figure who arrived with beasts of thunder and taught people to heal with knives of light. Could these stories be distorted memories of a lost epoch? The Aika stones refuse to yield easy answers. They exist in a limbo between artifact and anomaly, daring us to either rewrite history or confront the ingenuity or deception of their creators. What's undeniable is their power to unsettle. Whether ancient art or modern forgery, they force us to question how much we truly know about the past. And as we'll see, they're not the only artifacts suggesting that history's timeline might be far more flexible and far stranger than we've ever imagined. The Shroud of Turin isn't just a piece of ancient linen, it's a mystery woven in threads of faith and science that has baffled scholars for centuries. This 14-foot-long cloth bears the haunting image of a man, his body marked with wounds consistent with crucifixion, as if the fabric somehow captured the moment of his death. But what makes this relic truly enigmatic are the faint inscriptions scattered across its surface, barely visible to the naked eye, yet revealing phrases in Greek, Latin, and even Aramaic when enhanced by modern imaging. Words like Jesus of Nazareth and King of the Jews appear near the figure's head as though someone, or something left behind a cryptic signature. Carbon dating conducted in 1988 placed the shroud's origin between 1260 and 1390, firmly in the medieval period. Yet this conclusion only deepened the mystery. The image itself defies explanation. No paint, dye, or pigment has ever been detected on the fibers. Instead, the coloration comes from a microscopic change in the cloth itself, as if it was briefly exposed to an intense burst of energy. Scientists have tried replicating the effect with lasers, ultraviolet light, and even ancient techniques like vinegar-soaked cloth, but nothing produces the same precise, three-dimensional imprint. The shroud's weave is another puzzle. Its herringbone pattern matches 1st-century Palestinian textiles, not medieval European linens, and traces of pollen found embedded in the fibers originate from plants native to Jerusalem. Then there's the blood. Forensic analysis reveals the stains contain hemoglobin and bilirubin, compounds found in real trauma victims, and their placement aligns with Roman crucifixion methods: wrists pierced rather than palms, a crown of thorns, and a spear wound to the side. The blood type, type AB, is rare in Europe but common in the Middle East. Skeptics argue the shroud could be an elaborate medieval forgery, but no artist of that era possessed the anatomical knowledge to recreate such accurate wounds or the chemical expertise to fake blood chemistry. The inscriptions add another layer of intrigue. Multi-spectral imaging uncovered text fragments that appear to have been floated onto the cloth with no signs of brushstrokes or writing instruments. Some phrases mirror the titulus crucis, the plaque said to have hung above Jesus' cross, while others reference resurrection themes found in early Christian texts. Linguists note the letter forms mix styles from different centuries, as if the words were somehow imprinted across time. Perhaps the most compelling argument for the shroud's authenticity lies in what it lacks any sign of artistic composition. There's no stylization, no flattery, no attempt to conform to contemporary depictions of Christ. The image is stark, brutal, and eerily realistic, unlike anything produced in medieval religious art. To believers, it's a divine relic; to scientists, an unsolved riddle. Either way, the Shroud of Turin stands as a testament to history's enduring power to unsettle, challenge, and inspire. A single piece of cloth that refuses to fit neatly into any era's understanding. The Voynich Manuscript isn't just a book. It's a 400-year-old enigma wrapped in vellum, its pages filled with symbols that have resisted every attempt at decoding. Discovered in 1912 by bookseller Wilfrid Voynich, this 15th-century artifact looks like something straight out of a medieval alchemist's workshop. Its 240 pages are covered in flowing, handwritten script unlike any known language, accompanied by illustrations so peculiar they border on surreal. Strange plants with roots like human limbs, women bathing in interconnected green tubes, and celestial charts mapping constellations no astronomer has ever identified. Every page feels like a glimpse into a world that shouldn't exist. What makes the manuscript truly baffling is the script itself. Linguists and cryptographers have pored over its characters for over a century, from World War II codebreakers to modern AI algorithms, yet no one has cracked its meaning. The writing follows rhythmic patterns suggestive of a real language, with word lengths and repetitions that mirror natural speech. Statistical analysis reveals it's not random gibberish. It has the hallmarks of a structured communication system, yet one that aligns with no known tongue. Some researchers argue it's an elaborate cipher, while others propose it's a lost language or even an invented one, a private code meant for a single reader's eyes. Then there are the illustrations. One section teems with botanical drawings of plants that defy classification flora, with leaves resembling animal scales or flowers that grow in geometric spirals. Botanists have scoured historical records, but none of these species match known medieval herbals. Another chapter depicts nude women submerged in what appear to be liquid-filled chambers, their bodies connected by intricate piping like some ancient blueprint for a biological machine. The most haunting pages feature astrological diagrams unlike any in European tradition, with zodiac symbols arranged around a series of concentric circles, as if mapping a cosmology alien to our own. Radiocarbon dating places the vellum between 1404 and 1438, and the ink's composition matches 15th century recipes. But here's the twist. The manuscript's provenance vanishes before 1639, when it surfaced in the collection of Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, a man obsessed with the occult. Was it a gift from an unknown explorer, a hoax sold to a gullible patron? The truth may lie in the faint marginalia, a single line of legible text tucked between the mysterious symbols, written in an archaic German dialect. To decipher this is to hold the key to all things. Theories about its origin range from the plausible to the fantastical. Some scholars believe it's a medical treatise encoded to protect secrets from the church, pointing to the herbal and anatomical drawings. Others suggest it's the work of an isolated nun or monk, a visual diary of mystical visions. More controversial ideas propose extraterrestrial influence or time-lost knowledge, citing the manuscript's eerie precision in depicting cellular structures centuries before microscopes existed. But perhaps the most compelling clue lies in the manuscript's very durability. Despite its age, the ink hasn't faded, and the vellum remains supple, almost as if it was crafted with techniques meant to preserve its secrets indefinitely. The Voynich Manuscript refuses to surrender its meaning, standing as a testament to history's stubborn mysteries. Whether it's an elaborate jest, a forgotten language, or something far stranger, one thing is certain. Its silent pages continue to defy time itself, challenging each new generation to unravel what no one yet has. The Rongorongo tablets of Easter Island are more than just wooden artifacts. They're a silent cry from the past, etched in symbols no living person can understand. Discovered in the 1860s by European missionaries, these intricately carved tablets bear the only known written script from the ancient Rapa Nui civilization. But here's what chills historians. The glyphs don't resemble any other writing system on Earth. Curved lines twist into fishhooks and birdmen, while geometric patterns repeat with mathematical precision, some arranged in alternating lines as if the text was meant to be read in a back-and-forth rhythm. The sheer complexity suggests this wasn't simple pictography, but a fully developed writing system, one that emerged in complete isolation on the most remote inhabited island in the world. What makes these tablets truly extraordinary is their context. Easter Island's culture was already in collapse when Europeans arrived, its colossal moai statues toppled, its forests decimated. The few Rapa Nui who survived slavery and disease had no memory of the script's meaning, leaving modern scholars to piece together fragments of a lost language. Attempts to decipher the glyphs have led to dead ends. Some researchers see lunar calendars in the sequences, while others detect genealogical records or creation myths. The most compelling clue comes from the tablet's material. Many were carved from driftwood, suggesting the Rapa Nui risked precious resources to preserve these messages, as if they were sacred. Then there's the haunting possibility that Rongorongo isn't just writing, it's a warning. One tablet, known as the Tahua, shows glyphs arranged in spirals radiating outward, like ripples from a stone dropped in water. Could this depict the island's ecological downfall, a cautionary tale carved in wood? Local oral traditions speak of a time when the trees cried, when reckless deforestation led to famine and war. If the tablets do encode this history, they'd be one of humanity's earliest environmental allegories, a message across centuries about the cost of imbalance. Yet the greatest enigma lies in the script's potential connections. A handful of glyphs bear uncanny resemblance to symbols from the Indus Valley script, a writing system used 4,000 years ago in what's now Pakistan. Could there have been ancient contact between these distant cultures, or is this mere coincidence? The answer may lie in the tablet's final secret, their sheer durability. Despite Easter Island's humid climate, the glyphs remain sharply defined, as if the Rapa Nui treated the wood with preservatives lost to time. Whether these tablets hold prophecies, poetry, or simply mundane records, their power endures. They're not just relics, they're a conversation cut short, a language waiting for its Rosetta Stone. And until we find the key, the Rongo tablets will keep their secrets, whispering across the centuries in a code we're no longer meant to understand. The Fuente Magna bowl sits quietly in a Bolivian museum, its smooth ceramic surface etched with markings that shouldn't exist. Cuneiform script, the wedge-shaped writing of ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of miles from where it belongs. Discovered near Lake Titicaca in the 1950s by a farmer plowing his field, this unassuming bowl carries inscriptions that mirror those found on clay tablets in modern-day Iraq, dating back over 4,000 years. The implications are staggering. Sumerian cuneiform wasn't just a writing system, it was the backbone of one of humanity's earliest civilizations, used for everything from royal decrees to grocery lists. So how did it end up carved into a ceramic vessel in the Andes, a continent separated from Mesopotamia by oceans and epochs? What makes the bowl even more perplexing are the symbols themselves. Linguists who have studied the inscriptions identify them as Proto-Sumerian, a precursor to the more formalized cuneiform that emerged around 3,200 years before the Common Era. The text appears to be a mix of dedicatory phrases and what might be ritual instructions, with references to a gift for the gods and water that brings life. These themes align eerily with Lake Titicaca's role in local cosmology, a sacred body of water revered by the Tiwanaku culture that thrived in the region centuries later. Was this bowl a ceremonial object left behind by visitors from across the sea, or does it hint at a shared cultural memory, a fragment of knowledge that somehow spanned the globe before history began recording its threads? The craftsmanship deepens the mystery. The bowl's material is local clay sourced from the Bolivian highlands, but the style is unlike anything native to pre-Columbian South America. Its shape resembles Mesopotamian libation vessels used in religious ceremonies, complete with a spout for pouring liquids. Even more telling are the animal motifs flanking the inscriptions, creatures that look like a cross between Mesopotamian lions and Andean pumas, their stylized manes echoing artistic conventions from both cultures. This isn't a case of crude imitation. It's a fusion, as if the artisan was intimately familiar with two worlds that, by all accounts, should never have met. Skeptics argue the bowl might be a colonial-era forgery, perhaps created by a European scholar with a fascination for antiquities. Yet the patina and mineral deposits embedded in the ceramic suggest centuries of burial, and the cuneiform matches archaic forms that weren't fully deciphered until the late 19th century, knowledge unlikely to be possessed by a random hoaxer in remote Bolivia. Others propose it was brought over by a 19th century collector, though no records of such a transaction exist. The most compelling counterpoint comes from the local Aymara people, whose oral traditions speak of bearded strangers arriving by boat in ancient times bearing tablets of fire and knowledge of the stars. Could these stories preserve a distorted memory of contact? The implications ripple far beyond a single artifact. If the Fuente Magna bowl is genuine, it rewrites the narrative of human migration and cultural exchange. Sumerians were master seafarers known to trade as far as the Indus Valley, but crossing the Atlantic or Pacific would have required navigational feats far beyond what historians have credited them with. Yet ancient texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh describe distant lands beyond the waters of death, while Olmec carvings in Mexico depict figures with distinctly Sumerian features. Could there have been a Bronze Age network of exploration now lost to time? Perhaps the bowl's greatest lesson isn't about who made it, but what it represents: the audacity of human curiosity. Whether it's proof of transoceanic voyages or a relic of some forgotten cultural bridge, it forces us to confront a humbling truth: the past is far more interconnected than we've ever dared to imagine. And sometimes history's most disruptive clues come not from grand monuments, but from the quietest objects, ones that sit patiently in glass cases, waiting for us to read between the lines. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica's Diquis Delta, a series of massive stone spheres lie half buried in the earth, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of rain and wind, but their perfect geometry untouched. These enigmatic orbs, ranging from the size of a grapefruit to colossal spheres weighing over 16 tons, are among archaeology's most baffling creations. Carved with astonishing precision, their near-flawless roundness rivals modern machining tolerances, yet they date back over 1,000 years to a pre-Columbian civilization that left no written records. What makes these spheres truly mesmerizing, though, aren't just their shapes, it's the cryptic inscriptions etched into their surfaces, symbols that seem to chart celestial patterns no one expected these ancient people to understand. The carvings spiral across the stones in intricate designs, some resembling constellations, others mapping solstice alignments with eerie accuracy. One particularly massive sphere, discovered near the town of Pommer bears markings that correspond to the positions of Orion's belt during the winter equinox, a celestial event central to agricultural cycles. Another, unearthed near Isla del Coño, shows a series of concentric circles that mirror the orbital paths of Venus, a planet worshipped as a deity by later Mesoamerican cultures. But here's the puzzle: the people who crafted these spheres, likely ancestors of the Boruca or Kyriqui, weren't known for advanced astronomy. So how did they encode such precise celestial knowledge into stone? Then there's the mystery of their construction. The spheres are made of gabbro, a dense volcanic rock, yet they show no chisel marks or tool scars. Researchers speculate that artisans might have heated the stone with fires, then cooled it rapidly with water to fracture the surface, painstakingly pecking away layers with harder stones to achieve their smooth curves. But even this theory doesn't fully explain how they maintained such uniformity across hundreds of spheres scattered throughout the region. Local legends offer a poetic, if cryptic, clue. Oral traditions speak of the stones being softened by the songs of the gods, shaped by melodies lost to time. Their purpose is just as elusive. Some archaeologists argue they were territorial markers, their astronomical alignments serving as a kind of ancient GPS for trade routes. Others believe they functioned as ceremonial objects, arranged in patterns to mimic cosmic harmony during rituals. The most tantalizing theory comes from their placement. Many were found clustered in geometric formations, with larger spheres positioned to cast shadows that align with smaller ones during equinoxes, creating a sprawling stone calendar hidden in the jungle. But the greatest enigma lies in their dispersal. These spheres weren't confined to remote sites. They've been unearthed in riverbeds, atop hills, even submerged in coastal waters. One was discovered half buried beneath the roots of a centuries-old ceiba tree, its inscriptions facing downward as if deliberately hidden. Were they moved during conflicts, or does their spread hint at a network of sacred sites, a forgotten religion that once united the region? The answers might lie in the symbols themselves if only we could read them. What's certain is that these stones defy categorization. They're not tools in the conventional sense, yet their precision suggests a purpose beyond decoration or worship. They stand as silent witnesses to a civilization that mastered geometry, astronomy, and engineering, only to vanish, leaving behind these polished enigmas. Whether they were maps to the stars, conduits for divine energy, or something we've yet to imagine, the stone spheres of Costa Rica remind us that some of history's most profound mysteries aren't found in grand temples, but in the quiet perfection of a circle carved in stone. Rising from the red clay of rural Georgia like a modern-day Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones stand as one of the most enigmatic monuments of the 20th century. Erected in 1980 under a veil of secrecy, these towering granite slabs, each weighing over 20 tons, bear messages etched in 8 contemporary languages, from English and Spanish to Swahili and Hindi. But it's not their multilingual nature that chills visitors. It's the content of those inscriptions. The stones present 10 directives for rebuilding civilization after an unspecified catastrophe, blending practical advice like maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, with cryptic philosophical mandates such as guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity. What makes the Guidestones truly unsettling is their anonymity. Commissioned by a man using the pseudonym R.C. Christian, a name later linked to Rosicrucian traditions, the monument's creators left no clues about their true identities or affiliations. Bank records trace payments to a small construction firm, but the funds originated from an untraceable offshore account. Even the choice of location feels deliberate. Elbert County, Georgia, sits at the intersection of ley lines, ancient energy channels some believe were sacred to indigenous cultures. Was this a coincidence, or did the builders possess esoteric knowledge of geomancy? The inscriptions themselves read like a manifesto from an unknown future. One directive calls for a world court to settle international disputes, while another advocates for prizing truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. These ideals clash with the monument's more controversial tenets, particularly the call for drastic population reduction, sparking conspiracy theories ranging from Illuminati blueprints to dystopian prophecy. The stones even function as an astronomical clock. Holes drilled through the slabs align with solstice sunrises and the North Star, suggesting their creators valued celestial precision as much as ideological messaging. Then there's the timing. Erected during the Cold War's peak, the Guidestones' warnings about societal collapse resonated with nuclear apocalypse fears. Yet their language avoids specific threats, instead emphasizing sustainability and unity themes that feel eerily prescient in today's climate crisis. Was this a genuine effort to safeguard knowledge or an elaborate psychological experiment? The mystery deepened in 2022 when an explosion damaged one pillar before the entire structure was demolished, as if someone wanted its message erased. Local folklore adds another layer. Farmers whisper about strangers in suits visiting the site at night, while declassified FBI files mention anonymous letters threatening the stone's destruction decades prior. The Guidestones' legacy endures in fragments both physical and philosophical. Whether they were a warning, a blueprint, or an art installation, their true purpose remains locked in granite and shadow, a riddle carved not for our time but for whatever comes after. And perhaps that's the most haunting thought of all. Some messages aren't meant to be understood until it's too late. The Gosford Glyphs stare out from the sandstone walls of Australia's Kariong region, their weathered lines telling a story that shouldn't exist. Carved into the rock with startling precision, these hieroglyphs depict scenes straight out of ancient Egypt pharaonic boats, Anubis the jackal god, even the name of King Jedeffer, a ruler from the 4th dynasty who reigned over 4,000 years ago. The inscriptions describe a tragic voyage, Egyptian sailors shipwrecked on a distant shore, their leader dying in a land of venomous serpents, a phrase that eerily matches Australia's reputation for deadly snakes. But here's what defies logic. Mainstream archaeology insists Egyptians never sailed beyond the Red Sea, let alone cross the vast Indian Ocean to reach a continent unknown to the Western world until the 17th century. What makes these glyphs so controversial is their authenticity. Traditional Egyptologists dismiss them as a modern hoax, pointing to stylistic errors like mixed hieroglyphic styles from different eras and misplaced royal cartouches. Yet geological testing reveals the carvings show patina and weathering consistent with centuries of exposure, not fresh tool marks. Even more puzzling are the linguistic nuances. Some glyphs use archaic spellings only deciphered in the last 100 years, knowledge unlikely to be possessed by a casual forger in the bush. Local Aboriginal elders add another layer to the mystery. Their oral histories speak of men from the sunrise who arrived long before Europeans, bringing strange customs and tools only to vanish into the dreamtime. Could these stories preserve fragments of real contact? The site itself raises questions. The glyphs are carved into 2 parallel sandstone walls, forming a narrow passage reminiscent of Egyptian tomb entrances, an oddly specific detail for a prank. Nearby, explorers found carvings of what appear to be pyramids and celestial maps, including a star chart that some claim aligns with Orion's position over Giza around 2,500 years before the Common Era. Skeptics argue these could be natural formations or coincidental scratches, but the sheer concentration of Egyptian motifs in one secluded area feels deliberate. Then there's the logistical puzzle. Could ancient Egyptian ships designed for Nile and coastal travel survive an open ocean journey to Australia? Replica voyages like the 1977 expedition of the Ra-Roman II proved reed boats could cross the Atlantic, hinting at possibilities. Trade winds and currents from East Africa naturally curve toward Australia's northwest, making accidental drift voyages plausible. And if they did arrive, what drew them here? Hieroglyphs near the site mention the mountains where gold is found, a tantalizing clue. Australia's eastern ranges do hold gold deposits, though there's no evidence Egyptians mined them. The most compelling counterargument isn't about the glyphs themselves, but the silence elsewhere. If Egyptians reached Australia, why no pottery, tools, or DNA evidence? Proponents suggest any artifacts could lie undiscovered in the vast outback, or worse, were destroyed during colonial land clearing. The glyphs might be all that remains of a fleeting contact, a single crew's desperate record carved in stone. Whether ancient message or modern mischief, the Gosford Glyphs force us to confront the limits of our historical maps. They're a riddle etched in rock, daring us to reconsider who might have walked these shores first, and how many stories have been lost to time's relentless tide. Beneath the crystal blue waters off Japan's Yonaguni Island lies a structure so massive, so precise, it seems ripped from the pages of a lost civilization's blueprint. Discovered in 1986 by a diver searching for hammerhead shark habitats, the Yonaguni Monument rises from the seafloor like a sunken citadel, its terraced walls and stark right angles defying the randomness of nature. Stretching over 160 feet long and 80 feet wide, the formation boasts staircases with unnervingly uniform steps, what appear to be carved archways, and even a towering obelisk, all resting under 100 feet of water. But here's what chills archaeologists. Radiocarbon dating suggests this structure was last above sea level around 10,000 years ago, a time when humans were supposedly hunter-gatherers, not master stonemasons capable of megalithic architecture. The inscriptions etched into the monument's surfaces deepen the mystery. Faint but deliberate, these markings resemble proto-writing lines and grooves arranged in patterns that echo early Okinawan petroglyphs, yet with geometric precision suggesting measurement or ritual significance. Marine geologists argue the structure could be a freak geological formation, a result of seismic activity fracturing sandstone into planar surfaces, but the symmetry is hard to dismiss. Two parallel platforms align perfectly with the cardinal directions, while a circular depression near the entrance aligns with the summer solstice sunrise, a feature common in ancient sacred sites worldwide. Even more compelling are tool marks found along the edges, straight grooves that look unmistakably man-made, as if someone had quarried the stone with purpose. Local legends add an eerie layer. The island's oldest oral traditions speak of a land to the east that sank beneath the waves after the gods grew angry, a story mirrored in other Pacific cultures like the Maori's tale of Hawaii. Fishermen have long avoided the area, calling it the place where the sea eats stone, claiming strange lights sometimes ripple through the depths. Could these stories be fragmented memories of a real catastrophe? Geologists confirm Yonaguni sits atop tectonic fault lines, and sea level rise around the end of the last ice age would have submerged coastal settlements virtually overnight. The most tantalizing clue lies in the monument's potential connections. Similar submerged structures have been found near Taiwan and the Philippines, all sharing the same terrace designs and solstice alignments. Were these part of a vast pre-flood civilization, one that stretched across the Pacific before vanishing beneath rising waters? Mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, citing a lack of pottery, tools, or human remains at the site. But proponents counter that organic materials would have dissolved millennia ago in the corrosive seawater, leaving only the bones of stone. What's undeniable is the monument's power to disrupt. If natural, it's one of geology's most astonishing coincidences. If artificial, it rewrites the timeline of human achievement, suggesting advanced cultures rose and fell long before Sumer or Egypt. As sunlight filters through the waves above Yonaguni, illuminating those cryptic carvings, one thing becomes clear: the ocean guards its secrets fiercely. And sometimes history doesn't just hide in the shadows, it waits beneath the tide. The Tartaria tablets sit quietly in a Romanian museum, their small clay surfaces etched with symbols that rewrite the very origins of human communication. Discovered in 1961 near the village of Tartaria, these palm-sized artifacts date back to an astonishing 5,300 years before the Common Era, 2,000 years older than the earliest Sumerian cuneiform. At first glance, the markings appear simple, a mix of angular lines, circles, and animal motifs scratched into the baked clay, but their arrangement tells a different story. These aren't random scratches, they're organized in deliberate rows, grouped in ways that suggest syntax, the building blocks of a written language, and that's what shakes the foundations of history as we know it. What makes these tablets truly revolutionary is their context. They were found alongside ritual objects in a burial site belonging to the Vinca culture, a Neolithic society previously thought to be pre-literate. The symbols don't resemble pictographs or primitive tallies. They exhibit abstract qualities found only in advanced writing systems. Some glyphs recur in specific sequences, like early logograms, while others appear to represent numerals. One tablet even shows what might be a primitive calendar, with lunar phases marked alongside symbols for crops, suggesting these people weren't just recording events but predicting them. The implications are staggering. If the Tartaria inscriptions constitute true writing, it means literacy didn't emerge in Mesopotamia as long believed, but in the fertile plains of southeastern Europe. This wasn't some isolated attempt at symbolism either. Similar Vinca symbols have been found across the Balkans, from Serbia to Bulgaria, spanning over 1,000 years of consistent use. That kind of continuity hints at a shared cultural tradition, one that may have influenced later scripts like Linear in Crete or even early Sumerian Proto-Cuneiform. But here's the haunting question: who were these scribes? The Vinca people left no grand monuments, only traces of their settlements, clay figurines, copper tools, and these enigmatic tablets. Their society thrived during a period historians once called the Silent Millennium, a gap between the hunter-gatherer era and the rise of city-states. Yet these artifacts suggest they were anything but silent. Were they traders who needed records, priests tracking celestial cycles, or perhaps the tablets served a darker purpose? Archaeologists note some were found near sacrificial altars, their glyphs stained with ochre in ways that suggest ritual use. The mystery deepens when you examine the symbols themselves. One recurring motif shows a horned figure beside a tree, a possible precursor to later agricultural deities like the Sumerian Dumuzi. Another depicts a zigzag line between two circles, a pattern modern linguists interpret as either a river boundary or a symbolic representation of the life-death cycle. Most baffling of all is a sequence resembling a rudimentary spreadsheet, rows of symbols paired with tally marks, as if tracking commodities or tributes. This level of administrative thinking shouldn't exist in a culture without centralized government. Mainstream archaeology struggles to reconcile these contradictions. Some scholars dismiss the tablets as elaborate ritual objects, arguing that true writing requires evidence of widespread use. Others counter that the Rosetta Stone was also a singular find until context proved its language was systemic. The most compelling argument for the tablets' authenticity lies in their materiality. The clay shows signs of repeated handling, with worn edges suggesting they were frequently consulted, not just ceremonial props. Local legends add an eerie footnote. Folklore from the Carpathian Basin speaks of the Old Ones who spoke in stone, a primordial race said to have taught humanity the secrets of harvests and stars before vanishing into the earth. Could these stories be distorted memories of the Vinca scribes? Or do the Tartaria tablets point to something even more profound, a lost epoch when writing flickered to life in multiple places, only to be extinguished and rediscovered millennia later? What's undeniable is their power to disrupt. These humble clay fragments force us to reconsider not just where writing began, but why. Were marks on a tablet the catalyst for civilization, or merely a symptom of some deeper shift in human consciousness? As we turn to the next artifact, remember, sometimes history's most revolutionary ideas come not from grand libraries, but from the quietest whispers of the past waiting centuries for us to listen. The Newport Tower rises from the heart of Rhode Island like a medieval sentinel misplaced in time, a circular stone structure with 8 graceful arches, its weathered blocks whispering secrets of a past that shouldn't exist in colonial America. At first glance, it resembles the kind of round church towers dotting the Scandinavian countryside, built by Vikings or Templars centuries before Columbus set sail. Yet historical records insist it was constructed in the 17th century, a humble windmill for Benedict Arnold's farm. But here's what doesn't add up. The architecture is all wrong for a colonial utility building. The tower's precise masonry, its arches aligned to solstice sunrises, and the cryptic symbols carved into its foundation stones suggest a far older, far more mysterious origin. The inscriptions are the real enigma. Faint but deliberate, these markings include rune-like characters etched into the mortar, some resembling Norse glyphs for land and voyage. Others show weathered crosses and Templar-esque sigils, motifs entirely out of place in Puritan New England. Most compelling is a series of drill holes arranged in constellations patterns matching the night sky as it would have appeared over Scandinavia in the 12th century. Could these have been navigational aids left by explorers who charted these shores long before recorded history? Then there's the tower's engineering. Unlike colonial structures which used irregular fieldstones, the Newport Tower's blocks are uniformly shaped and mortared with a unique lime mixture, identical to medieval European techniques. Its arches distribute weight precisely, a design principle Renaissance builders employed but one that would have been arcane knowledge for 17th century farmers. Even more telling, the tower's orientation. The northeast arch frames the sunrise on the summer solstice, while the southwest aligns with sunset during the winter solstice, an astronomical feature common in Viking Age structures like Norway's Borgund Stave Church. Skeptics argue the tower was simply modeled after English windmills, pointing to Arnold's British roots, but no other windmill from that era shares its design, and colonial records describe it as the Old Stone Mill, implying it predated their arrival. Local oral traditions add fuel to the fire. Narragansett tribal legends speak of a stone house built by pale strangers long before European settlers came, while early colonists reported finding the structure already standing, its purpose forgotten. The most tantalizing clue lies beneath the tower. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of subterranean tunnels, their walls lined with the same runic markings. Were these escape routes, storage chambers, or something more ritualistic, without excavation blocked by preservation laws? We may never know, but one thing is certain: the Newport Tower refuses to fit neatly into history's timeline. Whether it's a Viking outpost, a Templar refuge, or a colonial oddity imbued with forgotten knowledge, this stone sentinel stands as a silent challenge to the stories we tell about America's past. And sometimes the most disruptive truths aren't found in dusty archives, but in the stubborn stones that outlast them. The Wolfseg Iron sits in a museum vault in Austria, its smooth metallic surface defying the very bedrock it was pulled from, a cube of pure iron, sharp-edged and symmetrical, unearthed from coal seams dating back millions of years. When miners discovered it in 1885, buried deep within tertiary-era deposits, it shouldn't have been there. This wasn't a raw nugget or a meteorite fragment. It was unmistakably worked metal, its faces flattened and edges deliberately beveled, as if machined by tools that predate human civilization itself. But the real mystery lies in the faint markings etched across its surface grooves that form geometric patterns, intersecting lines that resemble no known script, yet bear the hallmarks of intentional design. What makes this artifact so baffling isn't just its presence in prehistoric strata, it's the material. Pure iron doesn't occur naturally in this form. The cube's composition shows negligible impurities, a purity achievable only through smelting techniques that didn't exist until the Industrial Revolution. Even more perplexing are the traces of nickel and cobalt alloyed into the metal, a combination found in modern steel production but alien to any ancient or natural process. Geologists have scrutinized the surrounding coal, confirming its age at over 20 million years. So how does a refined metal cube, covered in cryptic symbols, end up encased in deposits from an era when mammals were just beginning to dominate the Earth? The inscriptions deepen the puzzle. Under magnification, the grooves reveal microscopic striations consistent with tool marks, not erosion. Some form right angles too precise to be random, while others spiral in patterns reminiscent of sacred geometry found in later human cultures. One face bears what looks like a series of concentric circles, their spacing mathematically uniform, a feature seen in ancient calendrical devices. Yet there's no evidence of a civilization advanced enough to craft such objects in that epoch. The closest parallel, the mysterious grooved spheres from South Africa's 2.8 billion-year-old pyrophyllite deposits, another set of out-of-place artifacts that defy explanation. Skeptics propose the Wolfseg Iron might be a fragment of a meteorite forged in the heart of a dying star, but meteoritic iron contains telltale crystalline structures and Widmanstetten patterns, none of which appear here. Others suggest it's a hoax, perhaps a misplaced piece of mining equipment, yet historical records from its discovery describe the cube embedded solidly in unbroken coal, with no signs of a shaft or borehole nearby. Even more confounding are 19th-century laboratory notes describing the object's surface as unnaturally smooth, with markings that resist all known acids, a durability inconsistent with modern metallurgy of that era. Local folklore adds an eerie layer. Austrian miners whispered of the Devil's Dice, a legend about cursed objects hidden deep in the earth, left by beings who walked the land before the Great Flood. Could these tales be distorted memories of a lost technological age? Or does the Wolfseg Iron point to something even more unsettling, a glimpse into a cyclical view of history where civilizations rise, fall, and leave behind only the rarest fragments, buried so deep we mistake them for anomalies? What's undeniable is this unassuming cube's power to disrupt. It's not just an out-of-place object, it's a question cast in metal, demanding we reconsider the boundaries of time and progress. Whether it's evidence of forgotten innovation, a cosmic accident, or a relic from a timeline we've yet to imagine, one thing is clear: the Wolfseg Iron refuses to fit neatly into any textbook. And sometimes the most profound mysteries come not in grand monuments, but in small, dense puzzles waiting millions of years to be held in the light. The moment we step back and look at these 27 artifacts together, a startling pattern emerges. Each one defies the timeline we've been taught, whispering of possibilities that mainstream history struggles to explain. So where does that leave us? The debates rage on, but they tend to cluster around a few compelling theories, each with its own fervent supporters and glaring blind spots. Let's start with the idea of lost civilizations, not the mythical Atlantis of pop culture, but real, advanced societies that rose and fell long before recorded history. Proponents point to the Antikythera Mechanism and the Baghdad Battery as evidence of sophisticated engineering that couldn't have sprung from nowhere. These weren't flukes, they argue, but fragments of a broader technological tradition, one that might have been wiped out by cataclysms like the Younger Dryas impact or rising sea levels. Think about it. If the Piri Reis Map accurately depicts Antarctica's ice-free coastline, could it be copying charts from a seafaring culture that thrived when the continent was habitable? The problem: no smoking gun. Where are the cities, the factories, the infrastructure? Skeptics counter that isolated artifacts don't equate to a global super-civilization, no matter how dazzling they seem. Then there's the extraterrestrial angle. From the Quimbaya airplanes to the Dropa Stones, some artifacts seem to depict technology, or beings far beyond their era's capabilities. Ancient astronaut theorists highlight the precision of the Nasca spirals or the Sakara Bird's aerodynamic design, asking, could these have been inspired by visitors from the stars? Even the Aika Stones, with their dinosaur carvings, fit into this narrative. What if ancient peoples encountered creatures or machines they couldn't explain, recording them as best they could? But here's the hitch: without physical evidence of alien contact, no alloys we can't replicate, no propulsion systems buried in tombs, this theory leans heavily on interpretation. A bird figurine might look like a jet to modern eyes, but that doesn't prove its makers ever saw one. And then there's the wild card, time travel. It's the only explanation that accounts for objects like the London Hammer or the Ayod artifact items that appear technologically anachronistic yet are embedded in ancient geological layers. Could these be remnants of a future civilization's meddling, or even accidental drops from a traveler's toolkit? It's a fun thought experiment, but it raises more questions than answers. Why leave behind a hammer or a spark plug and nothing else? Why no records, no ripple effects in the historical timeline? Of course, skepticism has its place. Many of these artifacts have been dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications. The Aika Stones farmer confessing to carving them, the Kensington Runestone's dubious provenance, the Gosford Glyphs' stylistic errors all fuel legitimate doubts. Even the Denderah Light's bulb could just be a symbolic depiction of a lotus birth myth. But here's where it gets interesting: some hoax theories don't hold up under scrutiny. The Wolfseg Iron's metallurgy doesn't match any known 19th century source, and the Tartaria tablet symbols predate their supposed inspiration by millennia. So where does the truth lie? Maybe it's not a single answer. Perhaps some artifacts are hoaxes, some are misdated, and a rare few genuinely upend our understanding. Or maybe we're asking the wrong questions altogether. What if these objects aren't proof of lost technology, but of lost ways of thinking? The Quimbaya figurines might not be airplanes, but they could encode observations of wind patterns or celestial movements in a language of shapes we've forgotten. The Denderah Light might not be electric, but it could reflect a priestly understanding of static energy or bioluminescence, framed in myth. The real takeaway: history isn't a straight line. It's a tapestry with frayed edges and missing threads, and every one of these artifacts is a knot we're still trying to untangle. Whether they're proof of advanced ancients, cosmic visitors, or simply humanity's endless ingenuity, they remind us that the past is never as simple as it seems. And sometimes the most profound mysteries aren't about finding answers, they're about learning to ask better questions. These 27 artifacts aren't just oddities, they're invitations to rethink everything we thought we knew. Each one, from the precision of the Antikythera Mechanism to the eerie glyphs of the Gosford carvings, forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth. History isn't a neat timeline, but a puzzle missing half its pieces. Maybe these objects are remnants of civilizations swallowed by time, their achievements buried under layers of catastrophe or neglect. Or perhaps they're evidence of knowledge passed down through secretive guilds, techniques guarded so closely they vanished with their last practitioners. Then there's the humbler yet equally radical possibility that human ingenuity has always been more unpredictable than we assume. The Baghdad Battery might not prove ancient electrical grids, but it does reveal how curiosity can stumble upon breakthroughs centuries ahead of their time. The Quimbaya artifacts may not depict jets, but they show how observation of nature birds, wind, stars, could inspire designs that echo modern engineering. Maybe these weren't technologies in our sense, but intuitive leaps, artistic expressions of patterns only later codified by science. But let's be honest, some of these artifacts refuse to fit even the most flexible narratives. The Wolfseg Iron, locked in coal millions of years old, or the Ayod artifacts aerospace-grade aluminum, aren't just ahead of their time, they're outside it entirely. These are the enigmas that keep archaeologists awake at night, the ones that crack open doors to possibilities we're not yet ready to face. Lost epochs, interstellar visitors, or even glitches in the fabric of time itself. What unites them all isn't a single explanation, but their power to unsettle. They remind us that discovery isn't about confirming what we already know. It's about being wrong repeatedly until the pieces finally click. And that's the real treasure here. Whether these objects are hoaxes, miracles, or misunderstood relics, they've done their job. They've made us question. So what's next? Every year, new technologies like ground-penetrating radar or AI-assisted decryption bring us closer to answers or deeper into the maze. Maybe the next breakthrough lies in a forgotten cave, a dusty museum archive, or even your own backyard. The past isn't finished speaking, it's waiting for the right listener. Now it's your turn. Which of these artifacts haunts your imagination? Do you think they're proof of something extraordinary, or just history's inside jokes? Drop your theories below, and if you're hungry for more mysteries, hit subscribe, because the world's full of puzzles, and we're just getting